Joining me is the panel, Michael Kroger, former Victorian Liberal Party President, and Stephen Conroy, former Labor Senator and Cabinet Minister. Stephen, today's Newspoll, shouldn't the government have got more of a lift in its support after throwing billions of dollars at tax cuts to millions of people in Middle Australia?
Look, part of the problem of today's media splintering is that messages take longer to get through. So I'm not sure I ever, even going back 10 years before social media was such a dominant paradigm, that I never believed that Newspoll would capture something within a week or two. So I think the pluses or the negatives of this package won't start showing up in the Newspoll for another couple of weeks. Ask people an opinion about what do you think about getting more money in the pocket, and surprisingly 65% of Australians said we think that's a good idea.
Yeah, so what I take from what you're saying is that you'd actually want more of a lift than you've seen, but you're hopeful that in time you will get it. Have I summarised that well?
Quite well, Andrew. No. Long after the tax cut has been spent and forgotten, the lie will be remembered, and the fear of a repeat of 19 will be remembered by the electorate. I mean, when you look at the sloppy, embarrassing, nervous answers given by Katie Gallagher and Chalmers to questions about negative gearing, capital gains tax, franking credits, etc.
We've got no plans.
No plans. How hollow, how pathetic. I mean, how believable are those answers? People are, pocketing the tax cut at the same time they're looking at those answers thinking, I'm not going to believe a word these people tell me ever again on tax.
But Michael,
that's the problem.
This poll really seals it. When you've got 62% of Australians polled, apparently by Newspoll, saying they support this tax plan, there's no way for the Liberals to oppose it.
No.
Is there? So what are they going to do?
They're going to have, exactly as you said, I think they have to support it and also support the full implementation of the stage 3 tax cuts that they took to 2 elections effectively. So that's what they're going to have to do.
So
it'll be a great
that'll be a Christmas
but that's what they've got to do.
I mean, if Peter Dutton decides that his major spend in the next coming election is to reintroduce the $30-odd billion to the wealthier as from 150 up, if that is their priority, fantastic. That is a Christmas present for Albo.
It's just restoring a promise.
It's a Christmas present
plus
for
looking
Albo,
after the poor.
because that's $30 billion they're not going to spend anywhere else.
But if it was,
if they want to lock it in,
if it was that alone,
and try and sell that, they're selling to 40%.
Don't forget they've already implemented stage 1 and stage 2. So no one was complaining about that. No one was really complaining about 3 when the whole thing was announced.
Michael, I hope they adopt your policy. It's a Christmas present.
Well, I think they will.
I mean, let me be clear. I have sat in cabinet, more importantly in shadow cabinet, when you get these sort of choices, and they are shocking choices.
Do you think the Liberals should do what the Labor did? Like, promise something and then break their promise afterwards because you never had any intention?
Well, let's be clear.
It seems to work
if Peter Dutton doesn't do what Michael said...
Now, do you think the Labor...
If Peter Dutton doesn't do what Michael said and you're advocating, then they will be breaking their promise to
correct.
That's correct. Are you advocating that the Liberals do what the Labor Party did and lie shamelessly through their teeth and break their promise afterwards?
Unless Peter Dutton... Peter Dutton does exactly what you're advocating, they are going to have...
We got away with it.
They're going to be engaged in the exact conduct you're criticising Labor for.
Which you think is good, right?
No, I think it's good. 60% of the Australian public support the change.
You do think it's good. OK, rightio. Well, that's exactly what I think. This is how politics gets devalued.
Correct.
Labor does it and then thinks, defies the Liberals to do the same. But whose idea was this really, this breaking of the promise? We talked on the show last week with Cameron Milner, that apparently, he says, he's got good mail, Chalmers,
no, he doesn't.
isn't talking too much to Albo. There's tension. And partly because Albo seems to get the blame. Now, for breaking the promise, the funny thing is, of course, that Albanese at the National Press Club last week did actually want all the credit for these cuts. Here he is.
I recognise, as the Treasury analysis confirms, working households have experienced the fastest rise in their cost of living. That's why, over summer, I asked Treasury and Finance to present us with options to help people with their cost of living, whilst importantly continuing the fight against inflation.
What a man, all out of zone idea, sitting there and sends the order out look for an option. But today, the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury claims, well, that idea actually first came to them from the Treasurer and, in fact, from the Reserve Bank Secretary.
The Secretary had been thinking about how to provide cost of living relief in a way that didn't add to inflationary pressures. He was interested and had mentioned to us around roughly the same time that he would like the department to think about whether adjusting the personal income tax rates and thresholds could provide broad-based relief to all taxpayers.
So whose call do you think this really was, and does it matter?
I don't think it was Albo's, to be honest. He's got about as much interest in economics as Gough Whitlam had. I mean, quite frankly, Andrew, he was not sitting there in his lounge chair in the backyard over Christmas thinking, I must ring Treasury and ask. I mean, Albo's not thinking that. For goodness' sake,
you're not saying
because he was trying to take. You see, one of Labor's problems is people are asking, "What's this government for? Why is this government there?" He's trying to create some sort of thing that he's for tax reform. He's ahead of the game. He's a visionary. He's ringing Treasury. He's in charge. He's another Paul Keating
in this country. That's what Albo's about. This is just such a ludicrous conversation. You just got to try and find anything to try and back up your argument.
Albo is a plotter. Let's be honest. He's a plotter on the he's a plotter on the treadmill of life, who's happened into this position. Hawke and Keating would look at him and say, "There have been better days for Labor, wouldn't they?"
I probably can accept, but really. Hey, but listen, I need to ask you before we run out of time. Chris Bowen. Someone's got to put him in another ministry where it's not going to create the government too much problem. But
immigration, Andrew, put him in immigration.
But the
Prime Minister announced the tax emission stuff either over the weekend or late last week. So Bowen was just going further, as in explaining the details of what was announced on the fuel emissions.
Now you've got to tell me that
this was actually announced the other day. No, I'm saying it's just a factual statement. Like, the PM gave an indication about the fuel emission stuff. I think it was on the weekend.
What
and Chris Bowen came out and fleshed it out.
Say, all right, car plan. Do you think it's a good idea to make cars more expensive and force people onto it?
Look, I don't take my best guess from Cameron Milner like you guys have been so far.
He hasn't talked about cars. I'm asking you about cars.
The PM made the announcement on the weekend, and Bowen's then come out and fleshed it out.
I got that.
That's the job of ministers.
We got that bit. More electric cars.
No, but this has been coming.
It's a great idea.
Well, this has been coming for the last 18 months. This has been a Labor stated policy for 18 months. It's not Frankenstein. What's Frankenstein? Are you trying to pretend today's tax cuts have been eaten up by some car purchase in 7 years' time?
Yes.
7 years' time.
Well, before then, it's ratcheting up. The tax is coming now.
The tax cuts now.
No, the
tax cuts now.
Car thing.
The car thing in 7 years' time suddenly wipes out your tax cut in the year.
I tell you what, by then your $15 won't have gone.
So you can't put the two of them together and pretend that it's one hand on the other hand.
Andrew,
it's one hand today.
Someone needs to ask Chris Bowen, does he still believe in the tax cuts, the tax increase policy he took to the 2019 election? Does he still believe in his heart and his head? Does he support those?
He's the climate change minister.
He's a member of the cabinet, though. He's in the cabinet.
Minister.
He's got a vote on it. He's in the cabinet.
Michael Kroger, Steve Conroy, thank you very much to you both. I hope we got some of those lines through all the counter talk. Really appreciate that.